What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over the X-Men. Now, with that statement, we do pick up with X-Men issue number 24. Now, remember, we are currently working our way up to Fatal Attractions. Now, technically, we already covered the first two chapters of that X-Men crossover. Now, the first two chapters were really more about X-Factor and X-Force. But now it's time for us to work our way into the other chapters that is going to focus more on the X-Men team, both gold and blue team, leading into the moment where you have Magneto do one of the worst things in Marvel Comics history to Wolverine. But before we get that moment, we got to sit down and talk about X-Men issue number 24. Because right now, the X-Men, they're in the process of grieving. Now, before we are able to actually sit down and talk about the idea of why the X-Men are grieving, I kind of want to jump over to Gambit and also Rogue. Now, for me, this was the moment where you had the X-Men books establish the fact that Gambit would do anything to get with Rogue. And the reason why I'm saying that because there were other moments in the past before this book right here that kind of did show that Gambit did have a huge crush on Rogue and wanted to be with her so badly. But for me, this was the moment right here because you had Rogue and Gambit go on a date. Nobody else is there. Just them two on a date finally. And you have Gambit right now getting close enough to Rogue where he's able to touch her, but also not being affected by her powers. It is kind of like, hey, I'm going to tease you, but also show you that we can still have some kind of physical touch with one another. Because for you, I understand that you may love me and I may love you back, but you want to have that physical touch. We can do that without just kissing. We can do that with me just holding your face with gloves on or holding your hand with gloves on. And so you have Gambit all in her face. And for Rogue, she's kind of like, yo, this is very intense, but like, I like it. And so for me, it was like, hey, this was the moment you had Gambit say, hey, girl, I would do anything for you to be with you. I will risk my life to be with you. But the reason why you had Rogue and Gambit out there on a date, because again, the X-Men are grieving. And the reason why? Because the death of Illyana, the younger sister to Colossus. It was a huge moment for the X-Men to see that young girl die in their home. Now remember, she was affected by the legacy virus. And so you had Charles Xavier and Mordo Taggart just trying their best to find a way to actually save her life. But unfortunately, she had died. And so for Mordo Taggart, she hates the idea that over the years being with the X-Men, she has seen so many young mutants die over the years. Young mutants who were not really able to live a full life up to her age, or at least the older X-Men age like Beast, Jean Grey, and Cyclops. Now, with that being said, we're also seeing the book kind of re-establishing the love between her and Banshee. Now, we had saw these two be a couple in the early days of X-Men comics when it came to our coverage. But when it came to Mordo Taggart, she had ran away from the X-Men back in X-Men issue number 4. And so for Banshee, he tried his best to chase after her, but he lost her. And so for Banshee, he just stood away to give her space, but he was called back home. And the reason why? Because of Illyana's death. It's almost everybody coming together to talk about the idea of the death of Illyana. But also, it's Sean Cassidy saying, listen, I missed you, but I realize you need your space for everything else going on in your life. Now, for Mordo Taggart, she realized that she had made a mistake pushing him away. And so it's her asking him, can you forgive me? And if you do, can we go ahead and start all over again and rebuild our relationship? And he says yes. And so just like that, those two people are now back together once again. Now we jump over to Charles Xavier and Beast. Now the book is kind of reminding us that for the legacy virus, at first, only Charles Xavier and Mordo Taggart knew about the actual virus. for the rest of the X-Men, they believed that Illyana was just sick with the flu, and that was really it. But in reality, the girl had the legacy virus. Now for Cyclops, he had left the X-Men for like 2 books and went back to Alaska where he had ran into Mr. Sinister and had officially learned about the legacy virus. And really, I'll talk more about that here in a moment, but for Charles Xavier, he didn't tell the rest of the X-Men the truth until Illyana had officially died from the virus. And so now you have Beast coming to Charles all like, you didn't ask me. You should have had me in your corner and had me work with you alongside Mordo and Banshee to see if I'm able to actually find a cure for the legacy virus. Because Beast is a scientist. He should have been there with Charles Xavier, with Mordo and Banshee, working through all the different numbers to hopefully find a cure for the legacy virus. But Beast was not there. And the question is right now, if Beast was there, could have they saved the life of Illyana? Now, I want to jump over to Cyclops and Jean Grey. And the reason why, because like I said a moment ago, for Cyclops, he had left the X-Men for like 2 books. And it was a good reason why. Because of Psylock. You see, for Psylock and Cyclops, they were kind of liking each other. And for Cyclops, it did seem like for a moment, he would be okay with cheating on Jean Grey to just be with Betsy. But he realized that was completely wrong. And the reason why, because he was madly in love with Jean Grey. And so he said, you know what? I just need a break from both Jean Grey and Psylock, and went to Alaska to spend time with his grandparents. Now, while out there, he ran into Mr. Sinister, who told him about the legacy virus. And don't worry, I will explain more about that here in a moment. But for Cyclops, after that moment, he came back home and he realized that he should be with Jean Grey, not with Psylocke. And so you have those 2 characters also getting back together once again. Now, I kind of want to jump over to Psylocke, and here's the reason why. See, in the 1990s, it was a huge mess for this character, and let me explain. You see, in the 1990s for Psylocke, originally, she was a British woman when she first joined the X-Men in the 1980s. And matter of fact, there was a brief moment where she had became the actual leader of the X-Men, but she then told the X-Men to walk through the Siege Perilous. Now, the Siege Perilous is a very powerful weapon that has the ability to give you a new life, to start a new life somewhere else. Now, sometimes you'll be able to remember things from your past life, and sometimes you may not remember anything from your past life. And so when it came to Psylocke, when she had went through the Siege Perilous, when she woke up, she was in the body of an Asian woman. Now, for me personally, it kind of felt like Chris Claremont had big plans for Betsy Braddock. But unfortunately, by this point, he had left Marvel and the X-Men books behind. Now, with that being said, in the 1990s, they said, hey, listen, the body of Betsy Braddock is still out there, the British version of her. And so, out of nowhere, you had Kawanin appear. Now, when it came to Kawanin, she was in the body of Betsy Braddock, while Betsy Braddock was in the body of Kawanin. Now, at first, we were kind of left to believe in the possibility that the 2 ladies had just switched bodies and that was it. But didn't realize that that's not technically true. That what happened was that both their minds were put in both bodies. So you have 2 bodies, but 4 brains. That's how crazy it is right now. And matter of fact, you have Wolverine up here saying like, hey, you guys are just 2 ladies with 4 minds put together, because both bodies have the minds of Betsy Braddock and Kawanin. Like I said, it was 1990s mess, and it only gets worse for the character over the years. Now, for a brief moment, we actually jump over to Jubilee. Now, in one of our previous videos, we had talked about the idea of Jubilee becoming very close to Illyana. And so seeing the young girl being happy at first when she had arrived at the school of Charles Xavier to end up being dead a few weeks later, it broke Jubilee because she grew a bond with Illyana. But unfortunately, now that young girl has been taken away from her. She's literally heartbroken. And because Jubilee is so young, it's so hard for her to go through the grieving process. Now, I want to jump back over to Rogue and Gambit. And the reason why, because you still have Gambit trying to risk everything to be with Rogue. But for Rogue, it's more of like, dude, slow your roll, because the last time she was close to a boy, she hurt that boy very badly. The whole idea that if you touch her skin, there goes your mind and your powers, but more your mind than your powers. And you might possibly fall into a coma. And so for Gambit, he realized that even though he can't touch Rogue, there's still other factors that go into a relationship. And so you have the two characters realize that if they want to kind of keep this going, they have to focus on the other factors besides physical touch when it comes to a relationship. Now I want to jump over to Cyclops, Jean Grey, Charles Xavier, Beast, Banshee, and also Mormon Taggart, because you have all our heroes coming together to talk more about the legacy virus. Now, when it comes to the legacy virus, everyone knows about it now. Everyone knows that this virus is killing off mutants left and right, and sooner or later, it could possibly wipe out the entire mutant race. Now, for Cyclops, he got confirmation the virus came from Strife himself. Now, in the 1990s, the early 1990s, for Cyclops, he believed that Strife was actually his son from the future. He has no idea that in reality, Cable is actually his son and Strife is the clone of Cable. Either way, though, for our heroes, it's really Cyclops saying, hey, listen, I ran into Sinister and he told me that he has some kind of deal with Strife. Unfortunately, that deal did not fall through. But on top of that, it was Strife who had released the virus. And so now for our heroes, their main goal is to figure out how to actually tackle this virus before it does possibly kill off the entire mutant race. Now, the last few pages are really more just setting things up for down the road in X-Men comics. So for example, you have Jubilee and Wolverine kind of continuing to build that bond with one another, the father and daughter bond between the two characters, because it's Wolverine saying it's okay to cry. Like, what you saw happen to Illyana is a big deal. So go ahead and cry it out. And she does as he holds her in his arms. Now we do get another page where we are trying to establish the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Kawanin, who's in the old body of Psylock, could possibly be a traitor or somebody who's trying to hurt the X-Men from the inside out. And so right now you have both ladies just on guard against one another until one of them actually slips up and tells the actual truth about their origins. And the last page of this book is really more of us leading into Fatal Attractions, because you have Cyclops and Jean Grey just going to bed, but being happy about the idea that they're finally back together. And they feel like there's no one out there in the world who could possibly break them up, except maybe one guy might actually have that chance, and that could be Magneto. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.